be true to yourself. It sounds so cliched, but nice people like working with nice people.
Welcome to Island Influencers, where we share stories of successful business owners, experienced professionals, entrepreneurs, and community leaders based or with influence in the Isle of Man. This podcast is brought to you by Thornton Chartered Financial Planners, because great financial planning has the power to change your life. Now here's your host, Sharon Sutton.
This week's Island Influencer is Dick Welsh, the Director of DW Maritime Limited, providing consultancy and registration services for one of the world's leading maritime centres, the Isle of Man. Dick talks to me about his lifelong career in maritime. From a merchant navy cadetship to serving engineer officer, he came ashore to study mechanical engineering and become a marine surveyor, where he worked in Liverpool, Denmark and China before returning home to the Isle of Man to work for the island's growing ship registry. After 25 years of developing the register to become one of the world's most advanced and influential registers, he retired in 2019 and established DW Maritime Limited as a consultancy. It draws on Dick's experience and skills to provide services to the maritime industry on flag state matters, maritime regulation and registration services, to assist the Isle of Man's maritime cluster and provide support services to the valued clients of the Isle of Man Ship Registry. Dick, or as Dickie as I called him today, is a chartered engineer and a member of the Institute of Directors. In the Queen's New Year's Honours List in 2020, he was awarded an MBE for services to maritime. Here's this week's conversation with Dickie Welsh in episode 69 of Island Influencers. Welcome to Dickie. Thank you so much for coming in to Island Influencers studio recording on this sunny morning in St John's. It's my pleasure to welcome you here, and thanks so much for coming onto the show.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure for me, and get up early, get in here, and fantastic.
Yeah, it's good making the most of the new summer.
Indeed.
Summer hours. If you're listening to this in the winter time, I do apologise. But let's start just I wind back in time, to talk about you, where you've come from, what you've got up to all throughout your career, Mr. MBE. Congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
And to be here today. So over to you, Dickie.
Well, born in Castletown to a Manx mother and a father from Liverpool that had been brought over here, as we say. And then Castle Rushen High School. Didn't really know what I wanted to do, but my father and my grandfather and a lot of their family had all been at sea, so it was kind of written. I'm a September baby, so I was 8th of September, but they pushed me into high school at 10 because I think, frankly, the headmaster at Ballasalla was sick of me, and we'd only had 3 classes. He didn't want me again.
Right.
So they made a deal, and I got to high school at 10.
Wow.
Which meant I couldn't join the Merchant Navy Cadetship until I waited another year. So
right.
Stayed on for a year of A-levels just to keep the maths and physics up. And then I joined T&J Harrison's as a marine engineer cadet, and they sent me to Liverpool. 4 years at college, including a year away at sea training. And then I became a fully fledged marine engineer. So I sailed around the world at sea as an engineer.
Wow.
And then
around the world, what sort of routes did you do?
Pretty well everything. I did initially West African and Caribbean traditional cargo ships. Then I was on container ships.
Yeah. And
then I did a plethora of different ships, but pretty well travelling all over. So that was a great life for a young man.
Yes.
Fantastic. And then I got married. My wife came with me for 2 years, which was fantastic.
Right.
She gave up a teaching post and came with me. And then we suddenly thought, no, we need to do something different to this. This fun can't exist forever. We need to put down roots and settle down and what have you. So we came back to the Isle of Man, and I worked for the MEA, as it was then. It just merged, and worked in the power stations, became a shift charge engineer there. And that was going well, but I decided I needed to get back and formally qualify as a chartered engineer, and that involved me leaving the MEA and going back as a mature student to what was Liverpool Polytechnic, which is now Liverpool John Moores University. And expecting to be the only 30-year-old in a class of 18-year-olds, but there was a lot of us. Yeah. And a lot of us with similar backgrounds grounds to myself, and it was a fantastic 3 years.
Yeah.
It cost me a lot of money. I worked during the holidays, but it was a fantastic time and a great decision. When we talk about steps that you take and you physically take them yourself and make a decision, that was the best thing we did. And Sue worked in a school in St Helens, and then I qualified as a mechanical engineer.
Wow.
And then joined Lloyd's Registry Shipping as a surveyor.
Yeah.
And then worked in Liverpool, Denmark, and finally the pair of us went out to China to live and work in these relatively new shipyards, which was eye-opening.
Yeah, I bet.
It's unbelievable.
Was that sort of the early stages of the Chinese urbanization kind of?
Absolutely. Yeah. We were in a really difficult place, which looked like a moonscape.
Yeah. With
the shipyard. We were the only Western people there. People would follow us around and pull the hairs on your legs and your arms and all this kind of stuff. They just thought we were alien species. Yeah. And that was a great, great grounding for me.
Yeah, sure. That's fascinating. What sort of era was that then, Dickie? What sort of year?
That was 93, 94.
Yeah. It's not that long ago, really, is it?
It's not that long ago.
No.
But in terms of that place, I keep an eye out because I've been back to China quite a lot with the role with the ship registry.
Yes.
And see the changes. But I do look at that place. I've never revisited the specific place.
Yeah.
But you can look on Google Maps and you can see what's changed.
Yeah,
it's immense, the changes.
Gosh.
So then back to a chance meeting with a surveyor from the Isle of Man Ship Registry, as it was then, the Marine Administration.
And it was just sort of embryonic then, I guess.
It was embryonic.
Yeah, and what sort of year is that?
That was 95.
Yeah.
Came back home on leave, went for a chat with them and said, look, I think this is what I need to be doing. This is what I really want to be doing. Change cards, what have you. And then eventually they rang me up. Post had been created or was available.
So did you see an economic opportunity then for us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We were a fledgling team, and what they'd started was fantastic. And the guy, Jeff Davis, they brought in to start the operation was superb. He'd left. We had another person take over, which he didn't settle on the island. But you could see that this was going to be something great if we did it right. If we didn't do what the UK did, if we didn't do regulation, because it is a regulator, if we didn't do regulation for regulation's sake, think about what the client wants. Think about how they can achieve compliance. That was the thing. It turned the whole thing on its head.
Yeah. Oh, fancy that.
Yeah, and Jeff Davis was responsible for that, but I was able to keep that ethos going.
Right.
People enjoy that.
Yeah, no, indeed.
Working with the clients, working with the ship owners, who are all responsible people. So yeah, that was back here in 95, come back to Roost, fantastic. And then life just became exactly what we wanted it to be, living back in the beautiful Isle of Man. We then adopted twice. We adopted two young girls from China, so we were back in China during the whole process and whatever.
Wow.
And then we became this little family down in Bradda East in Port Erin, and ever since then.
Yes.
Then I took over as director in 2016. I'd been principal surveyor and heavily involved in running the place. Director in 2016, and then right through to retirement in 2019.
Yeah. Gosh.
So here I am.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember you retiring, and it seems like yesterday. So, of course, the pandemics and things, it kind of is really. It's It
was a long retirement. I ran it for a long time. We enjoyed a lot of partying and seeing different people, but it was great. And then, of course, what are you going to do then? So I've set up a consultancy, DW Maritime.
Yeah.
I've got some of the great clients from the ship register that I represent on the Isle of Man. I do some stuff, some sort of technical support. I do some reports for organisations like the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
And I've just taken a new role, which is hot off the press. I'm allowed to talk about it, which is to be the Isle of Man Commissioner for the Northern Lighthouse Board.
Oh, okay.
And that's a fantastic opportunity for me.
Yeah.
So the Northern Lighthouse Board looks after all the lighthouses and buoys, navigation aids, Scotland and the Isle of Man.
That's a big area.
It's a big area, but the Isle of Man is quite unique, so they need somebody on the board who represents the Isle of Man.
Okay.
So that's a Lieutenant Governor appointment here, and then a DFT appointment in the UK. So it's great. It's a great board to join.
Yeah, that's superb. The MBE, that came in 2020, was it?
It was the new year of 2019.
Yeah.
I got the call from the Lieutenant Governor.
Right.
in November, but you've got to keep your mouth shut until
Yes.
it's announced on the 30th in the London Gazette. We were skiing at the time, and we were away, and the kids didn't know.
Yeah.
And we had to get them up and tell them, and then
Wow.
then the news breaks, and it's an amazing thing. It's
How did it feel?
Unreal.
Yeah.
Unreal. The governor was very good. He said, "You won't believe this is happening. You won't even believe this conversation has happened, because it'll go quiet and nobody will talk to you about it, and I won't talk to you again until you get the official documentation."
Yeah, I don't believe it until you actually get to see it. Yeah.
He said I could tell Sue, so I told Sue. We went to the theatre that night, and I was just sat there in complete and utter shock.
Yeah,
it's a great thing.
Yeah, good play then.
Don't know what we saw.
Right. No, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and then,
congratulations.
of course, the
That's
investiture was delayed, cancelled,
Yes.
cancelled,
Yeah,
COVID.
of course. Yeah.
So we finally got down there in November 31st last year.
Right.
So finally got the
Yeah.
got to do it.
Who did you meet?
It was Princess Royal. And
Okay.
she's been heavily involved in shipping for a long time.
Yeah.
In fact, she's patron of this Northern Lighthouse Board.
Right.
And I have not met her directly, but been involved in occasions that she's been at.
Yeah.
But she's so keen on shipping, the questioning she had,
Really?
and the
Yeah.
chat we had. If she can do that for every one of the attendees, it would be amazing. She is amazing. She's amazing.
She is amazing. She's not too keen on biking though.
Is she not?
No, I met her once, Island Games in Guernsey, was it? 2003. Yeah, I didn't like cyclists.
Right.
Horses and cyclists, don't always go well together. Although,
For sure,
yeah. So I'm just curious as to look at the Isle of Man's shipping register back then. Did it sort of get launched at the same time, or was it completely separate, or sort of collaborative with the aircraft register?
No, it's probably, we don't know. I have a suspicion it's older than the UK register. It's 1846 or 1864.
Yeah, it's a bit pre-aeroplanes, isn't it?
Yeah, very pre-aeroplanes.
Yes.
And it had been sitting there as a sort of second register of the UK.
Yeah.
And we would register our fishing vessels there. You could register the Ramsey steamship vessels. But it really was just on ice.
Yeah, gosh.
And then a very smart government in 1984, as at the time when British shipping was moving out, and it was offshoring, if you like, under a modern term. So they were moving companies to Cyprus, to Hong Kong, to Bermuda, and all the ships were going and registering in those ports.
Yeah.
A government sat here and went, could we have a slice of this action? And it was such a smart decision. They then wrote to the UK and said, we want to run our own register. And the UK said no. And they said, we want to run our own register. And this went on and on and on.
Yeah, we've got one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And in the end,
Yeah.
that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
The same thing happened with the aircraft register 2006. I'll talk about that a bit later. But they actually got permission to run it. They brought Jeff Davis in, who was ex-UK ship register, who'd seen how you shouldn't do it and turned it on its head.
Yes.
And then they brought in all the legislation very quickly so that we could run the shipping register. And then they started to attract companies to the Isle of Man. So these companies that came, the Bernard Schultes, the Anglo-Easterns, the Shell, the Peter Dullers, all those came because there was a reason to come, because we could see this register happening. So they started to stop the flow out to Cyprus and Bermuda. Companies started arriving here.
Yeah.
And so that benefited the economy. So whatever they decided to do, I don't think they realised it could be good, but it really was good for the island.
Sure. Yeah, well, we can tell that from the numbers of shipping companies there are here still, from all sorts of angles.
Yeah, that's right.
And how many people they employ, and are expanding from what I know.
Yeah, and then of course the yachting, the super yacht industry followed that. And then they started predominantly with British companies, Northwest European companies. We managed to expand into Asia, where nobody knew who the hell the Isle of Man was or where it was. You start from a very low base once you get east of Suez. And now 60-70% of the tonnage is Far East controlled. So it's a fantastic success story.
Yeah.
And it's brought businesses to the island, it's brought employment opportunities, and it's brought a very stable sector to the island.
Yeah.
It doesn't just flitter out.
Well, no,
shipping.
we're
It's
always going to need
be,
global trade, aren't we?
Precisely. It's always going to be here.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good story.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
So, just on the aircraft registry, exactly the same thing happened. They decided that the ship registry was doing well, so the government said, could we do this for aircraft?
Right.
They went down to London, got told to go away, went down to London again, and then Brian Johnson, who they'd brought in, super guy to run the aircraft register.
Yeah.
He was chatting to a colleague in DFT in London, and they said, oh, we've got this M registration on ice. Do you want it? And it was like, do I want it?
Is it GBM?
It's M dash and then 4 alphanumeric characters.
Oh, okay.
So you could play about like you can with number plates. But he thought he was going to get a GZ or a GJ or something like that.
Yeah.
But he actually got the M dash, which made it so attractive for these high net worth individuals that want their jet registering, and they can play about with the name and register it. So that was a real sweet spot for him.
No.
And then I'd like to say, if Brian's listening, and I hope he is, that we taught them everything they know, and they followed everything that we did, and became a great success in their own right.
It's great. And is it right to say, or I mean, forgive me, I don't know, but has there been some sort of collaborative good principles, best principles shared from the likes of our regulator, the Financial Services Authority and the Gambling Commission? Because it seems that we have a lot of regulation here that seems to be e-gaming. It seems to be a lot of world-leading kind of stuff.
And I think the Isle of Man has to be whiter than white. We have to be highly regulated. We have to prove that we're this incredibly highly regulated jurisdiction to compete and to be able to rebuff anything that comes from the UK or the US that says it's just a tax haven, it's a banana, whatever they decide to say. We can say, no, this is a really highly regulated industry.
Yeah.
But it's how you regulate, and it's all about working out what's needed to comply, pragmatism, friendliness, all these things that regulators never used to do. That's what we developed here. And I think there is a sharing among all the different registers.
Yeah.
And then moving them into the electronic field was something that was never done. We led the world really in terms of moving into the electronic space, moving everything online. So there isn't this masses of paper moving backwards and forwards around the world. So there is a sharing, yes. And I think this is a great flight to quality and flight to regulation if people want to take it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks for sharing all of that, Dickie. What a fab story. And it, it just goes into all sorts of other areas that I would never have thought were connected. It really has. So thank you. I mean, if you don't mind me asking, and I haven't asked anybody this for ages, but I do in my day job, obviously, as a financial planner, but they reckon, and I read this quite recently, actually, that most people's money habits are formed by the age of 6, which is sort of relevant as to why I'm asking you the question. So what was money like growing up? What's your earliest memory, or how was it?
I would say we were comfortable. We were looked after. We weren't wealthy.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever had a holiday till I was about 16, and they forced me to go to Southport once.
Right.
When I didn't want to, when I'm 16 and I want to stay here.
Yeah.
But we had a great family environment. We lived down the Prom in Castan initially, and then moved to Ballasalla when I was 5.
What did Mum and Dad do?
Dad had left the sea and was a surveyor for British Engines, so the Royal Insurance Company. He did all the machinery inspections on the Isle of Man.
Right, okay,
yeah. He'd actually met my mother in Liverpool, and he'd applied for a job in the Isle of Man. She wanted to leave the island, and he was keen to come to the island because he'd always come here as a boy.
Yeah, okay.
His father had left the sea and had a pub in Garston in Liverpool, so his boyhoods were always in the Isle of Man. And she was gutted when he said, I've got a job in the island. But actually, I think they loved life here. So very happy childhood. Didn't have a lot of money. And I guess that when you say, it's formed when you're 6, it's that save it to buy it it's still something I instill in my kids. Don't go and get credit. Just save it, and you'll value that watch, that necklace, that whatever it is, so much more. And just thinking about that, there was a Martin's Bank in Castletown, and my grandfather took me, and we got a big, horrible orange plastic grasshopper. And it was a grasshopper savings account.
Okay.
And you couldn't open it, but the bank could.
Oh.
And you put your money in that, and then you took it to the bank and they put it in an account.
I remember those, yeah. That's amazing.
I'd completely forgotten about this account until about 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And Barclays Bank wrote to me, because I think Barclays had taken over
Yes,
Martin's
they did,
Bank.
they bought it, yeah.
And they sent and they said, you've got £3.21 in this account.
God. Yeah, no, I remember the concept of the money boxes that you couldn't open.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the point of being able to open it?
Exactly. So if that sets the scene for the later Dickie Welsh, I'm certainly a save before you buy it kind of guy.
Yeah,
and make sure you've always got the money to cover eventualities.
Yeah.
So that's what I've instilled in Tia and Lily. They've got to have the money and then go and buy whatever it is.
Good.
So,
Thank you. Yeah. So, but of all the things that you've done in life, then what has given you, Dickie, the most fulfilment? You can say from a personal, but from a business perspective as well. It's always interesting to look at both, I think.
I think from a personal perspective, it's the whole family, Mary and Sue, doing everything together. I mean, we literally have done everything together.
Yeah.
When I was back at university as a mature student, she was looking after the finances. She was the teacher in a fairly horrible school, but doing it so that we could develop what we had together. And then coming out to China with me, not easy.
No.
And then the adoption, that's something that, nobody ever sets out in life, or few people set out in life to do that. Situations develop, and doing that together was trying at best.
Yeah.
Beautiful at the finish, and then bringing up the family like we have. So that's on a personal level.
Yeah, well, I hope you don't mind me saying, but that takes very special people to do that.
It does, but it takes a special need to want to do that. But thank you, and then professionally, the ship registry has been just a joy to be a part of, and to lead that team to generate something that starts small and then becomes a global player. And you can walk into any shipping conference anywhere in the world. They will understand the Isle of Man. They know its strengths. They're watching it because it's so advanced in terms of the IT provision and everything else, and the way that it deals with clients. We've got some of the world's major clients using the Isle of Man Ship Register, and others are looking at them and thinking, there's generally a herd mentality. What is this thing? What is this Isle of Man thing? And it's all to do with service.
Yeah.
Somebody answers the phone. It's not press 1 for this or 2 for that.
Yeah.
Deal with people. And then, of course, once the pandemic hit, I'd retired by then, but I was proud that everything was in place so that people could just disappear from home and it would work seamlessly.
Yeah, you didn't get any calls to get back.
No, I got a lot of calls about what's going on, but Cameron took over from me, and we meet up for coffee and
that's
drink
nice.
regularly.
That's so nice.
And talk through things. And he's a pal as well as the next guy.
Well, it's nice when there's mutual respect like that.
Yeah. And I love that part of it. But pride in that is and doing something for the Isle of Man. When you come from here, it's more than just a passion for the job. It's a passion for the Isle of Man.
It is.
And one thing that's dawned on me over all my travels, when you meet shipping people who are all expatriate, this, that and the other, wherever they are, it'd be the same in financial services. You sit and have a drink at the end of the day, and the guy from Cyprus will say to the guy from Hong Kong, so where are you going next? Oh, I'm retiring. Well, where are you going to live? Oh, I don't know. I've looked at Australia or Canada. And they have no base. They have no roots.
Yeah.
People who live here, have come here, or were born here, they don't have a contract mentality. Nobody talks in Douglas, where are you going next? And that's a real, it just came to me one day, sat in Singapore, and I thought, I've never heard that in the Isle of Man. You hear it in Bermuda, you hear it in Hong Kong, you hear it everywhere.
Yeah.
But here, people are talking about what the kids are doing, where they're going to buy a house, how we're going to get them back to the island. It's a different mentality.
Yeah, it is.
So that's
it is.
That's great.
Yeah. So Dickie, for any aspiring or existing business owner or entrepreneur, what would be your number one tip?
be true to yourself. It sounds so cliched, but and also I always think nice people like working with nice people, and as long as you're really behind the product that you're selling or dealing with or making, then you can use your own personality, or they will naturally move towards you and treat them right. Make sure the whole team's on the same page. I know these are all sort of cliches, but that's exactly what we had there. And the registrars that we had would get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to register a ship in 10 o'clock in the morning in China, because that's where they're built.
Yeah.
I didn't ask them to do that. I don't force them to do that.
No.
They do that because they want to help the guy on the end of the phone.
Yeah.
And that guy will send flowers to them. I don't. I'm a government worker. I can't reward them in the way that I'd love to. But, those little things, those little nudges and little talks to people, thank you goes so long.
Doesn't it just?
So, aspiring business owners, just be yourself and be good to people. And I saw a fantastic, I don't know where I saw it, but it was where interviewees came into a building and were either filmed as to how they behaved to the receptionist when they came in.
Yeah.
No matter what the job was.
Yeah.
And then before the decision was taken, the receptionist was asked, "What did you think of that guy? What do you think of that girl?" And sometimes they treat them as if they're not there.
Gosh.
Sometimes they'll spend a little time having a bit of a chat with them, and that was quite a valuable little lesson.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, cool. So, what do you? I know you're retired now, but you've got your consultancy. But what do you do to relax? What does balance look like for you? Having said just got back from a skiing holiday.
Well, it used to be rugby, and the rugby lads are still keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah, Baggers or Douglas or
nomads.
Southern nomads, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I mean, when you've been awarded an MBE, you're up in the air for a long time. But you go back and have a drink with the rugby lads, and you get put firmly back in your place, and that's a great thing to have. The Mickey taking still goes on, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But also, since I retired from rugby, I was always a swimmer. So I've taken up sea swimming with a gang for about the last 15 years.
Do you?
And we swim Sundays,
Port
Tuesdays, Port Erin, Port St Mary, depending on the wind direction. And then we move it around a bit in the summer. Yeah. And it's just, if I don't get my swim on a Sunday morning, I'm like a bear with the
So, wetsuit?
No, God, no.
Booties?
No.
So just trunks?
No. I eat enough pies to just jump in like I am. So,
Crackers. Fair enough.
So this time of the year, Tuesday we had the most beautiful swim. Before the jellyfish, pre-jellyfish.
Oh, there's jellyfish there now, are there?
No, not yet. This is pre-jellyfish. So the waters are gin clear. Oh. Cold, but just starting to warm up a little. Beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is gorgeous. The only sea swimming I've ever done is I used to do triathlon.
Right.
So we used to have the North West England Triathlon Championships here.
Yeah.
So I remember doing it once, 2 years actually. I got stopped by the train on the bike ride every time. But the second time when it was smooth enough, there were jellyfish everywhere.
Yeah, it's horrible.
And swimming but we had a wetsuit on at least. So, but it's still hands, feet, face.
Horrible.
And I remember actually coming down on one hand, and slapping it on the top.
Yeah, I've got a face full of it. But it's kind of Russian roulette. You get to the point where you think, oh, well, it's going to happen once a year.
Yes.
Or whatever. But and then skiing, of course, you mentioned skiing. So that's my other love, is get away into the mountains whenever we can.
Oh, yeah.
We've always had a family trip at Christmas, which my kids don't even know there isn't a white Christmas until COVID came around.
Same with my son.
and then one with the lads.
Yeah.
And it's a group of rugby lads from ex-Vaggers, ex-Douglas, ex-Nomads.
Yeah. Nice.
It is fantastic.
Yeah.
Another one to keep your feet on the ground.
Yeah. Lovely. So tell me, what do you think are the best things about living in the Isle of Man? I mean, you've covered quite a few.
Wow. It's pretty well, we've covered. I mean, it's a beautiful place to be. It's small and people know your business, and that's something that you either love or get used to or dislike, and it's not for you then. But it's just a beautiful place to be. People look after each other. People look out for each other. And the environment speaks for itself. But being able to do all the different sports and the support and the access to government is something that most people don't realise till they get here.
Yeah.
And even on a personal level, you can have access to your local MHK. But from a business perspective, being able to put legislation through in the speed that we can, make changes, and the government listens to the private sector and they work in partnership. That's a really fantastic thing to have.
Yeah,
and in Westminster, those wheels and cogs are huge, difficult to make a decision.
You got lots of lobbyists in the way, I guess.
But the reason we have a yacht register is because we were lobbied hard from a couple of players that were getting involved in managing yachts, and it happened overnight. Same thing with the ship register. There was a couple of people who had maritime interests on the Isle of Man.
Yeah.
Why don't you do this?
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
Aircraft registry, same thing.
Yeah,
So,
funny enough, when I spoke to Steve Roden, who'd recently stepped down as president, he said, the same thing about the island's ability to legislate for itself is just so underrated.
It is incredible. Yeah. So those things, I think the public-private partnership, probably overlooked by a lot of people, but certainly not by anybody in business, and it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good of you to underline and say that. It doesn't don't hear it often enough.
The schools,
to be fair.
the healthcare. Everybody's got to grow up. But
everyone's quick to moan, aren't they?
We've got fantastic state schools. We've got a great private school, and we've got healthcare and even cancer provision where you're flown off the Isle of Man. I mean, really, it is. When you need it, it's a fantastic thing to have.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, I agree. But every place has challenges. So what are our main challenges, would you say, and what would you do about fixing them?
All right, how long have you got? I don't think anybody had envisaged the last 2 years, and you think we've come out of a global pandemic that's cost a lot. It's created all sorts of problems, and what could be worse? And now we've got the Ukraine situation, fuel prices, reliance on fossil fuels.
Russian ships on the register?
Well, that happened, of course.
Yeah.
And even in my own private consultancy, I had to let go of some key clients because, they were sent. They were Russian. We don't want to do.
Sorry, mate, can't deal with you anymore.
We don't want to deal with you anymore. But you're never dealing with the person. You're dealing with an organisation, in Monaco or Singapore or wherever it may be.
Yeah.
And the same for the aircraft registry. But all of that is just going to be difficult to handle. But I think the Isle of Man is great at getting over hurdles. I think we've got a good new collection in the house. I think we've got a good new administration, and I think. The public will get behind that, but we're going to go through a lot of pain, particularly with this fuel. And then the biggest challenge for me is how do we bring in a green agenda without reliance on fossil fuels in the interim period? And
impossible.
Exactly. So somehow we've got to balance that, and I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Have you heard about the Kroger scheme?
Well, yeah. And I know quite a bit about that, and You don't want my personal opinion on it, but I think there has to be something in the interim, but we've got potential for tidal, we've got potential for wind.
Oh, lots of that.
If we've exactly, it never stops.
No.
And then if we've got to have an interim solution with taking some of the assets that we have, then I would personally be backing that sort of thing. Yeah. But I think the other challenges for me are, and I was having to think about this when I was away a couple of years ago, and I was looking around, and I visited Singapore a lot, and of course the speed of change there, you look at a Vista and it's gone, it's changed, and they have a different system of government, but we haven't really done anything big infrastructure make the island better. And we've got a lot of these brownfield sites and derelict sites that aren't doing us any favours. No. I hate to mention the P word of planning, but I think we've just got to get on with it. And if it's private investment, if it's private business, look at it. Is it going to damage us, or is it going to enhance our offering? And let them get on with it. I hate to see the golf links. I mean, My first job was as a caddy at 10 years old at the Golf Links in Castletown.
Yeah, I know. It's a shame, isn't it?
I hate to see it. I hate to see these things. I know the Marine Lab in Port Erin's been given permission, but I just want to see a
After
little
it burnt
bit
down.
Exactly. Yeah.
Start again.
But I think that probably did it a favour.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
I mean, it
Sort the damp out.
it could be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And cruise ship berths, all these kind of things, we need to consider
Yes.
a little bit more than just. And I get the TT, I love it, but let's. There's 50 other weeks that we need to be doing something with. So those are the challenges, and I would love to see an administration come in and say, we're going to develop every one of these grotty sites and just make it
Well,
happen.
yeah. I mean, if you look at Athol Street, and when we moved out 3 years ago, there was so many for sale or letting, and it's a crying shame. It's not Strand Street. All the top floors in Strand Street, it's all accommodation that could be utilised.
Precisely,
Yeah.
And the other thing that
Let's build another housing estate.
well, the other thing I'm keen on, and I've seen a film about a Japanese model.
Yeah.
Where they attract, because in Japan you just get sent as a graduate to wherever, might not be your hometown, and they land, but they have landing facilities for them. So like a student accommodation, a little bit nicer. So all these recent new graduates who are all kind of first time away from home get given a facility. It's at virtually zero cost. And they all grow up together there. They become young professionals together. They have an instant network of friends.
Absolutely, yeah.
And they haven't got the accommodation worries. If we did something like that with the nurses' home, the
UCM,
Castle Mona site, UCM,
yeah.
we could really make this a fantastic place for graduates to.
It's attracting the right sort of end of the demographic scale, isn't it? Yeah, that's a good idea. Golly.
Little things like that.
Yeah, great. That sounds a good idea. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, what have you got planned next? What are you doing? I know you've already. So you mentioned to me before, which you haven't mentioned yet. You did your Institute of Directors.
I did. Yeah.
And I just wondered if there's what that gave you, and then what more lifelong learning you've got planned, really.
Yeah. I did IOD about probably 6 or 7 years before I was due to retire.
Right.
And I wish I'd done it earlier.
Ah, right.
It was, without a shadow of a doubt, the best learning experience I've ever had. And I'd been to Ashridge Business School for a 14-day really intensive course, and the government were very good to put us through that kind of thing. And that gave me a lot. But Institute of Directors just took that to another level, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the people you meet who are all going through similar things, the shared experience in this building of solving different people's problems and then meeting up as a cohort after that. It genuinely was a fantastic thing to do.
And I thought, I suppose it would be from all sorts of different businesses and disciplines, so not just your own sector.
Yeah.
That's in itself is great.
Everybody learns from each other.
Yeah.
And then the documentation you get, I still have those files, I still refer to those files, but it also gives you that complete understanding of what a board is and what a board needs to do, which within government, we have a lot of boards, we have a lot of meetings, and we weren't all behaving like we could have been.
Okay.
We weren't as efficient as we could have been.
Yeah, so how do you mean? You mean not strategic, or
yeah, it's governance and strategy. It's so government actually funded a lot of senior officers to go through the IOD system, and then we started talking the same language, singing from the same hymn sheet, if you like, and it made such a difference.
Yes,
and
I'm sure.
For me, it's put everything in the right little boxes and given me understanding of what I should be doing. I'd been on a charity board that was very difficult. In the end, we folded it. We sold it onto the Children's Centre. It was to do with adoption, and it was a very difficult time.
Yes.
Had I known the stuff I'd learned through IOD, I would have been in a much better place.
Yeah,
but I wasn't. But I used that experience as well while I was here.
Yeah.
So that was always with a view to maybe there's some companies, non-exec directorships that I could use that qualifications and experience, but
Yes,
also my
sure.
maritime experience.
Yeah.
And that's what this Northern Lighthouse Board is now.
Yeah. So okay. And
I'd had a few conversations about different industries that I didn't really feel they were me. I didn't feel I could add a huge amount of value. Yes, I could be your non-exec director, but I didn't feel it was me. And then this came along.
Yeah.
Wow. I had a chat yesterday.
Yeah.
I had an induction yesterday, and I
Wow.
was bouncing when I came out of it.
no,
So,
that's amazing,
yeah,
Dickie.
it's given me
Yeah.
a new lease of life, and a lot of the contacts that I have in the different areas of UK government, Isle of Man government, will be really useful in that, because I can see where we could be doing something a little bit different.
So how long is your appointment for?
It's a 3-year appointment,
Yeah.
and you're allowed to renew 3 times.
Okay.
So Mike Brew, who's just left the post, was the ex-director of Harbours in the Isle of Man.
Yes.
Mike and I's career have kind of followed each other, or been involved with each other. Mike was with Canadian Pacific Shipping when I was with Canadian Pacific, and then he worked for Isle of Man government in the harbours when I was in the ship registry. And then he retired and he got the post, and he's just done his 3 cycles. The reason I know it's so good is Mike says, I'm so jealous of you going into this.
Yeah.
Because I'd continue and continue and continue. So yeah, that's that. But IOD helps you enormously, because this is a massive board. It has the high provosts of 3. It's mainly Scottish organisation. High provosts from Glasgow, Edinburgh, and I can't remember where else. And then the sheriff from each fiefdom that have a coast. It's
Okay.
massive. So yeah.
What are they trying to achieve then?
Their role is to look after the navigation aids and lighthouses for that entire area. So
Okay.
it's funded by every ship that visits the UK,
Yeah.
pays light dues. And that money is divvied up to 3 different lighthouse organisations. So Trinity House looks after England and Wales. There's an Irish Lights Board and then Northern Lighthouse Board.
Yeah.
And that money is divvied up. So they have ships, they have helicopters, they have staff, they have technicians.
Okay, so there's a big responsibility
it's a
there.
big organisation.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Do you think they've all been on the IOD training there?
Quite a few of those have, and yeah,
Good.
it's.
So you think it's a good board to join?
They're nearly all QCs. So it's going to be an interesting first board meeting, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't be phased.
No.
If I were you, I wouldn't be
No, I'm
phased.
not. But at an operational level, I get what the ships are doing. I understand.
Exactly.
We're building a new vessel, so we're going through the process at the moment.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the kind of stuff I can get involved
Yeah,
in.
no.
So yeah, very
That's
excited.
great. I think you'll be.
Yeah.
I think you'll be a great asset to them.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Yeah. But IOD, definitely. Anybody thinking about it out there, just do it. I think it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And then the headquarters in London, you can use them while you're in London.
Yes.
It's
I've been.
a
It's
great
it's
thing.
good, isn't it? Yeah. Lovely. So moving on just to the sort of end of our podcast recording today. Really, it's there's a few questions I always like to ask guests, just to because listeners love to hear from them. So, are there any books that you've read recently, or sources of inspiration that you'd like to?
I don't think you'd want to see my reading list. I'm not a reader by any means.
Okay. So what do you do instead?
I watch videos, but anything I do read tend to be autobiographies and tend to come from the comedy sector.
Okay.
So that's the kind of thing. So at the moment I'm reading Bob Mortimer's book,
right,
which won't take long. So I just do a little snippet every time.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I watch television. I watch whatever I can. When I'm travelling, I watch whatever Netflix series and try and get through that kind of thing. So,
Not working away through Bridgerton at the moment.
I have never done Bridgerton. No. I'm still waiting.
My mum likes that.
I'm still working my way through Ozarks
right.
at the moment. Yeah.
I haven't seen that one yet. It's about some dodgy IFA, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd left absolutely dodgy.
Yeah.
But I'd left it for a while. I just picked it up when I was travelling the other day. So, yeah.
Have you got a favourite quote?
Interesting, yeah. I was asked to go back to Castle Rushen to do the prize awards.
Wow.
And I'd heard a quote, and I wondered where it had come from, and I used this for the students. And it was a mother asking her son every day when he came home, "Have you asked any good questions today?" And I love that quote. My kids are sick to death of it, because that was the quote I always used. And it was a Nobel laureate physicist called Isidore Rabi, who grew up in Brooklyn. And when all these Jewish kids came home, their mothers would always ask them, what have you learned today? Well, his mother would always ask him, have you asked any good questions today? And after he got his Nobel Prize, somebody asked him, how did you end up, because most of this Brooklyn community wanted to be lawyers or bankers. How did you end up as a physicist? And he said, because my mother used to ask me, have you asked any good questions today? She made me a scientist. And I just thought that was one that stuck with me for a long time. So
that's astonishing. Thank you for sharing that.
No, I think it's a great one.
It is.
And the only other thing is, again, I annoy people with is win the morning, win the day. I'm up early, get at it, do it. And it's not good for students. It's really not.
No, not teenagers.
Not at all, no. Don't get that one.
No. Yeah, morning, what's that? Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. And who inspires you?
Oh, dear. I really don't know. I mean, my parents are still going, 91 and soon to be 92.
Great.
And they are active and been involved in all sorts of different sort of areas of life. And I guess they're a great inspiration. They really are. They're they've got great grandkids, they've got grandkids. They just are the centre of everything for the family, really. So I would say they're a great inspiration.
Thank you very much. So where can people go to learn more about you, Dickie? Do you have a website, that sort of thing? Or?
I do have a website. I'm not very good at it. I haven't really...
You're on LinkedIn. I've heard you on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah. I've been a big advocate of LinkedIn. And I was very active on Twitter up until recently when I started to get a little bit angry about COVID and what have you. So I started to be a little bit more vocal than I should have been. And when you leave government, you suddenly think, well, I can use my own opinions now. And I think I probably used my own opinions a little bit too much. Took a hard look at myself and thought, probably not going to do myself any good here. So I let go of Twitter and then it deleted me. And I've just rejoined because I like to get news feeds and see what other people are talking about.
Yeah, it does have positive stuff too.
So I'm trying to be more positive on Twitter. I was very lucky to be included in the publication that Keith Uren did, the Portfolio 25 Years. And there's a great write-up in there which is on my mother's coffee table. So,
mums are our number one fans, aren't they?
But I think if you Google, you might just find me standing with a glass in my hand and a tie on at some shipping event. I do a little bit of sort of after dinner speaking, which I enjoy and get nervous about in equal measure. But I've done big events like the Liverpool Marine Engineers and Naval Architects Guild, which is like 900 men behaving badly, and that's a real leg shaker, that one, when you stand up like that. But so I'm quite well known.
If you used to a rugby crowd, pussycats in comparison, surely.
Yeah. Well, not really. I think the rugby crowd's easier because it's generally smaller and you know what they are. But I'm out and about. But online, certainly LinkedIn and a little bit of Twitter now.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's lovely. Thank you so much, Dickie.
You're welcome. It's been lovely.
Great.
It's been absolutely fantastic.
I've really enjoyed this, and thank you.